Chaos erupted faster than anyone could hit record when a private confrontation between Yandy Smith and Tamar Braxton exploded into a scene so intense that bystanders say even the police hesitated before stepping in. This wasn't just celebrity drama. This was a personal betrayal, a hidden truth, and a moment that pushed two powerful women to the edge. And the reason behind it all? A shocking accusation involving Mendeecees that no one saw coming until now. If you thought you'd seen every twist the entertainment world had to offer, think again. Because this story doesn't just shake the table, it flips it over. Tonight, we're diving into the escalating tension between Yandy Smith, Tamar Braxton, and the bombshell accusation that sparked one of the most heated confrontations of the year. You won't believe what happened next because this situation goes far beyond a simple disagreement or a misunderstood comment. What unfolded behind the scenes was emotional, personal, and deeply revealing. For weeks, whispers have been spreading through industry circles about tension brewing between Yandy and Tamar, but according to insiders, the real sparks started flying the moment rumors surfaced that Tamar had crossed a line that Yandy believed should never be touched, and when the truth finally confronted the room, everything changed. Voices were raised, emotions ran hot, and by the time the dust began to settle, the entire situation had spiraled so fast that security and officers had to get involved. In this video, we're unpacking the history, the motivations, the misunderstandings, and the deeply personal stakes behind this conflict. We'll explore how these relationships evolved, how trust allegedly broke down, and what really pushed these two strong personalities to the breaking point. And trust me, there are parts of this story that most people have never heard. Because as wild as this situation already sounds, the deeper you look, the more unbelievable it becomes. And this is where everything starts to unravel. Long before the confrontation went viral, long before phones were out and voices were raised, there were signs that something was brewing beneath the surface. People close to both Yandy Smith and Tamar Braxton had already noticed a strange tension creeping into rooms where they once exchanged effortless smiles and industry-friendly greetings. What looked like harmless distance at first slowly grew into something heavier, something unspoken, something waiting for a spark. To understand how things reached a breaking point, you have to go back a few weeks. Yandy, known for her loyalty-driven personality and her deep love for her family, had been hearing whispers, industry whispers, quiet conversations that start in the corner of a lounge, an after-party, or a backstage hallway where details get traded like currency. At first, Yandy brushed it off. Rumors come and go in entertainment. She's lived through more than her share. But the moment Mendeecees' name slipped into those whispers, her instincts shifted. There are lines Yandy refuses to let anyone cross, and her marriage is one of them. Meanwhile, Tamar Braxton was moving in her own world, juggling performances, hosting obligations, and navigating personal challenges that had already taken a toll. She wasn't looking for a feud, but according to insiders, she wasn't exactly aware of the growing discomfort her interactions were creating. Some say she thought everything was playful and harmless. Others claim she knew more than she let on. What's clear is that Tamar never expected her conversations with Mendeecees to spark a wildfire. The first noticeable spark came during a private event where both women were present. Witnesses recall the room changing the moment Tamar walked in, not because of anything she said, but because Yandy's expression shifted, almost like she was studying Tamar, trying to connect dots she wasn't ready to say out loud. That night ended quietly, but the energy wasn't forgotten. It followed them. And then a second incident, layered on top of the first. A moment so small, it could have gone unnoticed. Tamar and Mendeecees joking around backstage at a taping. The kind of playful exchange that could be interpreted in a dozen ways. But when stories about that moment were repeated and stretched, it became something else. Suddenly, comments weren't just comments. Interactions weren't just interactions. They were puzzle pieces Yandy couldn't ignore. Those around Tamar insist she never meant anything inappropriate. Those around Yandy say intention didn't matter. What mattered was respect. What mattered was boundaries. What mattered was a feeling that something wasn't right. But the real turning point, the moment that set the stage for everything that followed, came when an insider approached Yandy directly, someone she trusted, someone who believed she needed to hear what was being said behind closed doors. And when they mentioned Tamar's name alongside Mendeecees again, this time with far more detail than rumor-level noise, Yandy's patience reached its limit. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. Not to her. It was personal. And that's when Yandy decided she needed answers. But what happened when she finally confronted Tamar is what none of them were prepared for. When Yandy finally decided she needed answers, she didn't go in with cameras, assistants, or an entourage. She went in with emotion, with disappointment, with the weight of a wife who felt blindsided by conversations she never thought she'd have to imagine. And according to those close to her, she wasn't looking for drama. She wanted the truth. She wanted closure. She wanted clarity from someone she once respected. The moment that would soon explode across social media began quietly. It was supposed to be nothing more than a backstage conversation at a venue where both Yandy and Tamar were scheduled to appear. Tamar was already on site, surrounded by her team, laughing lightly, preparing, focused on her own responsibilities. She had no idea that the energy in the room was about to shift with the force of a collision. Yandy walked in with purpose, not angry yet, but controlled, focused. She scanned the room until her eyes locked with Tamar's. Witnesses say Tamar froze for a split second, surprised by the look on Yandy's face because this wasn't the usual friendly hello. This was something different, something heavier. The conversation began low and private. Yandy pulled Tamar aside, lowering her voice, but not her presence. She asked about the rumors. She asked about the conversations. She asked why Tamar had been around Mendeecees in ways that felt off. Tamar, caught off guard, tried to brush it off at first. She insisted it was innocent. She insisted she meant no disrespect. She insisted everything was being twisted, but it didn't land. People who overheard pieces of the exchange say, Tamar responded with her usual confidence, sometimes even a touch of defensiveness. Tamar is known for speaking her mind, and in that moment, she wasn't going to shrink back. She felt accused of something she didn't do, and that made her push back harder. Tamar had always been expressive, animated, and passionate. But Yandy wasn't there for theatrics. She wanted real answers. The tone shifted quickly. Yandy felt Tamar wasn't acknowledging how deep this cut. Tamar felt Yandy was confronting her over exaggerated gossip, and what began as a tense conversation started growing louder, more heated, more layered with emotion. Neither could hold back anymore. Tamar's team stepped in, trying to calm her. Yandy's friends moved closer, trying to support her. Voices began to rise. Space became tight. Two strong women, both feeling disrespected for different reasons, clashed like storm fronts. And then the tipping point. Tamar made a comment, one that insiders say hit Yandy in the most personal way possible. No insults, no yelling, but something that brushed against Yandy's marriage. Something that felt dismissive of her pain. And that was the moment everything snapped. Yandy stepped forward. Tamar stepped back. Hands were raised. Voices escalated, and suddenly movement became too fast to track. What started as a verbal confrontation turned into something physical, a shove, a grab, security rushing in from both sides. The room erupted, people screamed, people pulled, people tried to separate them. And though no one agrees on who touched who first, everyone agrees on one thing. The confrontation got real fast. By the time security got a grip on the situation, someone had already called the police. Officers were on their way and both women were still emotionally charged, pacing, shouting over the chaos, trying to be heard above the confusion. Tamar was furious, saying she was misunderstood and unfairly attacked. Yandy was shaking, saying she was pushed to a point she never wanted to reach. Their teams were frantic, the venue staff was overwhelmed, and cameras were everywhere by then. But the moment police walked in is when the story took another turn entirely because what they heard and saw didn't just shock them. It changed how the entire incident was handled. By the time officers arrived, the air in the venue felt electric, thick with adrenaline and the leftover shock of a confrontation that no one believed would ever happen between two public figures who once showed nothing but respect for each other. The moment the police pushed through the hallway, the energy in the room shifted from chaos to tense silence. The kind that creeps into a space when everyone suddenly realizes what's at stake. Officers didn't come in casually. They came in prepared, already aware from dispatch that the altercation involved high-profile personalities, which meant an extra layer of pressure. Cameras were out. People were whispering. Everyone was scrambling to distance themselves from the drama. Yet, no one could look away. Tamar Braxton was still visibly shaken, pacing the corner of the room, her team surrounding her like a human shield. Her hair was disheveled, her voice sharp with frustration, and her hands trembling with the kind of anger that comes when someone feels wrongly accused. Her team whispered to her, pleading with her to calm down. reminding her that anything she said in front of police could be interpreted in ways she didn't intend. Across the room, Yandy was breathing hard, her jaw clenched, her eyes glistening with a mixture of fury and hurt. She wasn't yelling anymore. She was too emotionally drained, too stunned by how quickly everything escalated. Her friend stood close behind her, not speaking, just grounding her with their presence. Yandy kept shaking her head, mumbling under her breath, unable to believe she had been pushed to the edge like that. And yet, she stood firm. She felt justified. She felt betrayed. Officers began separating the groups, asking questions, taking statements. One officer approached Tamar first, trying to get a clear picture of what happened. Tamar spoke fast, her voice wavering, insisting she didn't provoke anything, insisting she never crossed lines with Mendeecees, insisting this confrontation was built on lies and stretched stories. She said she tried to explain that to Yandy, but everything blew up before she could defend herself properly. Meanwhile, another officer approached Yandy. Her voice was lower, but her emotions were spilling out in every word. She talked about the whispers she heard. She talked about her boundaries. She talked about feeling disrespected as a woman and as a wife. She talked about how Tamar's response didn't feel sincere, how it felt dismissive, how it made her feel played with. And when she described the physical moment, her voice cracked, not out of fear, but out of pure frustration. But then the situation took a darker turn because while officers were trying to calm things down, someone stepped forward with new information. A staff member from the venue, someone who witnessed more than either team realized, approached police quietly and said they had seen something earlier, something that neither Tamar's team nor Yandy's team had fully acknowledged. This staff member claimed they saw Tamar and Mendeecees in a private hallway earlier that week, talking closely, laughing, and sharing what looked like a personal moment. The staff member wasn't implying anything romantic, but the detail alone added fuel to an already raging fire. It didn't confirm the rumors, but it didn't help Tamar either. And when officers mentioned this observation while gathering information, Yandy's face changed entirely. The hurt deepened. The betrayal felt sharper. The room tightened. Tamar jumped in immediately, yelling that the staff member misunderstood the moment, insisting it wasn't what it looked like, insisting nothing inappropriate had ever happened. She threw her hands in the air, pacing faster, her voice cracking as she defended herself. It was emotional, desperate, raw. But Yandy wasn't hearing any of it. She turned away, her chest rising and falling with a quiet intensity that had everyone watching her carefully. It wasn't rage anymore. It was disappointment. It was disbelief. It was a wife who felt blindsided by a friend she didn't expect to be linked to her marriage in any way. Police urged everyone to calm down, warning that if things escalated again, they would have to remove people from the venue entirely. Officers made it clear this wasn't going to turn into arrests unless someone crossed another physical line. But the way things were going, that possibility wasn't off the table. As the tension lingered, accusations floated back and forth. Some were emotional, some were defensive, some were said through tears. And then one officer asked the question that stunned the entire room. "Do either of you want to file a report?" Everything froze. No one breathed. No one moved. No one expected that question. Tamar's eyes widened. Yandy's expression hardened. Neither woman said anything at first because filing a report changes everything. It takes a heated moment and turns it into a legal one. It drags lawyers, courts, and headlines into the mix. It stains reputations. It leaves permanent marks. The room waited. Tamar swallowed hard, looking down, visibly shaken. Yandy blinked slowly, processing everything. And just when the tension reached its peak, one of them finally spoke. And the answer changed the entire direction of the night.